welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 93rd episode, our guest is Jeff Weiss. Here's his biography. Jeff Weiss is a writer from Los Angeles. He founded the blog Passion of the Weiss in late 2005, after a drunken rebel led him to get tattoos of several blog bands named after animals. He does not regret the Wolf Parade one. Other bullet points he feels compelled to hype: he was the co-host of the Shots Fired podcast. He writes the Rollin' on Dubs column for Pitchfork and, until recently, the Bizarre Ride column for LA Weekly. One time, he co-authored a book about Biggie and Tupac. Other random self-aggrandizement: he's been anthologized multiple times in the Best American Music Writer series. Passion of the Weiss was named the LA Weekly's Best Music Blog in 2013, and he was named Big Kahuna at High Five Sports Camp at age 8. You can find him on Twitter at PassionWeiss. Finally, I'd like to extend an open invitation to anyone currently associated with the LA Weekly. You're welcome to come on the podcast and give your side to the story anytime. And now, on to the show. Anyway, like I said, thank you for being on the podcast. I definitely wanted to, not a problem. And, I definitely wanted to talk to you first because I read your sublime 40 Ounces to Freedom retrospective with the 25th anniversary of that. We were talking a little bit before we got rolling here about how, there's a lot of snobbery in music. And I think one thing maybe that people don't buy, and I don't understand why they don't buy it, is they think like Bradley Noel was being insincere in some way. And I don't think that's true at all.
And it's kind of what I was kind of touching on when we talked earlier, but it's sort of the thing about Sublime is they're quintessentially a Southern California band, and
right.
I mean that they're stupid and they're a beach band, or they're like, bro, we smoke weed. Like, yes, that's part of it, of course, but there's everything from little bits of reggae, because there was a reggae record shop that they'd buy in Long Beach. I mean, Long Beach is one of the most diverse communities in America. Black people, Latino people, white people, they would all mix. They went to Wilson High, but Poly High had Snoop Dogg and Cameron Diaz at the same time. And apparently Snoop Dogg, according to the urban legend, Snoop Dogg sold weed to Cameron Diaz when they were in high school. And
wow.
That's the kind of place Long Beach is. And I'm not from Long Beach, I'm a little up north, but it's LA and Long Beach are pretty similar in a lot of ways. But there is a difference, and the sound of Long Beach is very much influenced in the Chronic, because you have Snoop and you have Nate Dogg and you have Warren G. And the influence of, there were a lot of African Americans that came to Long Beach in the World War II time to work in the factories and shipyards, because obviously there's a huge port there. And a lot of them were from the South, and so there's Baptist churches in Long Beach, whereas there aren't as many in other parts of Southern California. So there's all these little regional variances and ticks that sort of play into it. And, to kind of tie back into the whole LA Weekly thing, because I covered, I wrote about the Chronic on its 20th anniversary for LA Weekly. I wrote about Sublime's 25th anniversary of 40 Ounces of Freedom for the Weekly. There are ways to kind of speak to the community that only people from the community can necessarily understand. You're speaking a certain vernacular. Every city has its own slang, especially LA. There are almost every city has its own slang, but LA in particular, and I've said this a lot, it's a block-by-block city, and not in the sense that New York is a block-by-block city. It doesn't change necessarily that dramatically, but, it is you think about the gangs, you can walk 1,000 feet in one direction and step into a different hood, where if you're wearing you can't be if you are. I obviously wasn't a gang member, but I've interviewed dozens and dozens of them, and we've spoken at length, and you can't. There are hoods you just can't walk in. There are and people don't understand that. I think a lot of people heard about gangbanging or really figure from Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. If they're younger, obviously, I think Dre and NWA introduced you to a generation before that. But stuff where he'd be like, where your grandma stay, stuff like that, that is sort of what hood are you from? Are you the enemy, or are you from a hood that we're cool with? And it's funny, because it's I interviewed Kendrick Lamar, and I've told the story a million times, but it's a funny story, so I figure I'll just keep on telling it, because I interview Kendrick Lamar every day. He barely does interviews anymore, so I'm fuck it. But I think it was a story for the Hollywood Reporter, actually. And again, to go back to the LA Weekly, Kendrick Lamar, his first cover, I believe, was an LA Weekly cover, and so I'm out in some ridiculous he was doing the Grammy, so he was doing that thing with Imagine Dragons, where like they were going to create a song. So I spent like the afternoon watching them, and like Kendrick is brilliant, and Imagine Dragons are like just like explosions, like, oh, and they're giving him all these ideas, and Kendrick is like wandering around, like kind of just a writer's personality, like very introverted thinking, kind of pacing in the corner. And I recognized a lot of like just that writer mentality, kind of the loner at the corner. And, I think that's part of where he gets, his part of his gift. And so then like later on that night, I meet Kendrick that afternoon, and what's going on? We don't really talk. And then like later on that night, I'm invited to the interview because he's playing a big like Beats by Dre show at I forget where it is, one of those casinos, they're all the fucking same. And he's in this big beautiful room in the Cosmopolitan, like it looks like a sparkling chandelier turned upside down, like everything's crystal, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, this is how the other half lives. And I'm sure for him, someone like him, that must be particularly striking because he grew up in Compton, and it's like it's a different world. And so I walk into this interview, and Kendrick Lamar, like, I'm sitting in the room, like, awkwardly in the corner. It's like me and, like, all the TD and, like, his publicist, and I'm cool with them, but he really doesn't give a fuck who I am. And he's like, where are you from? And, I'm like, well, I'm from LA, but, the Hollywood Reporter flew me out here. I assume he's like, what city are you from? What publication are you writing for? Because, like, when you're at that level, like, you're not that invested, I don't think, in the minutia of what publication, is like, I'm sure he's done so many interviews at that point. And I'm like, oh, give my answer. And he's like, no, dog, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, Kendrick Lamar is banging on you. So I say Treetop Pyru, which is, it's a gang from west side of Compton, and he grew up. They were cool with, he was cool with Treetop, from what I had been told or gathered over the years. And so he starts laughing hysterically. He's like, oh man, you're all right. It's like, sit down. But stuff like that, where it's like, not to say that I'm like any kind of like great translator of LA, which like, I'd obviously like to be, but it's not my place to say. But like, there are things that you have to understand about any place that you are covering. And that is one of the main things why I'm so outraged. I'll continue to be outraged to the day I die, that these Orange County carpetbaggers thought that they could just come in, fire everyone, find a bunch of replacements, as though those replacements exist, and we didn't work, like you can just pull from an unlimited pool of people that understand how to cover a culture. And with all the sensitivities and idiosyncrasies inherent in that. And that's just kind of what I'm talking about. It's like knowing that, like, knowing how to get to Garden Grove without Yelp. It's like little thing. I mean, actually, they probably actually know how to get to Garden Grove because they're from Orange County. But they certainly don't know how to get to, like, any part of downtown LA that doesn't have, like, the $100 plate restaurant. It's just, like, it's preposterous. And, like, honestly, fuck them. And fuck everyone who's down with anyone that supports exploitation of communities, because that's what this is ultimately a thing. It's like, you came in, you're trying to exploit a community, you're trying to abuse the trust that these journalists and this publication had built up over 4 decades, and then you're trying to have your way with it. And whether they're white or not, because some of them aren't white, it is kind of the notion of white privilege, and I don't necessarily want to, you know what I mean? Like, it is that notion of like hubris. It's like, I can do whatever I want because I'm rich. And it's like, I'm sick of that shit. I mean, I know a lot of other people are sick of that shit, and like, something has to change in like American life. So like, I don't think this is any kind of thing that's going to be like certainly transformative, like on a bigger level. I hope it does, but I just like think it's important to take stands. It's like the same reason why I'm so mad when I watch Congress, and I'm like, I watch all these like Democrats like, oh, we lost 49-51, and wait till they're chanting like, wait till the midterms. And it's like, honestly, all of you go fuck yourself. Why don't one of you stand up and say something that's like profound and deep and has a moment? Because I believe in symbolic gestures, and I think that's what life has been. I'm a writer, been a writer my whole life. You look at like, you look at the history. It's like people like, stand up, you might die, but like, people are gonna remember that fucking speech. People are going to remember the gesture you made. People are going to remember the fight. People are going to remember the struggle. And those are all the rappers that I've loved. Like, I wrote a book on Tupac. Like, Tupac died. Like, he died for reasons that a lot of, I think it had more to do with his beef with Biggie and the Crips than it had to do with him being a revolutionary. But he was a revolutionary, and that's why his idea has kind of lived on, because he was fighting against these structures. And he did so many things, and like, I'm not in any way trying to equate myself, but it's like, that's someone that's a hero. It's a hero, and that's a hero to a lot of people in LA. And I wasn't about to grow up on POC and be like, I'm gonna let these Orange County motherfuckers like come in, fire everyone, disrespect the city. I didn't grow up listening to Ambitions of the Rida and like to live and die in LA and hear it that many times to like let that happen. So, I'm out here, and I don't know. I'm trying to make it so they leave because they have to leave, and I'll haunt their. No matter what happens to me, I will haunt their life until my last breath, because I don't. I think people need to be. I'm a firm believer in that people like can't do that. It's like I'm one of those people that'll give like everyone like the utmost respect and then dignity, regardless of who they are. I think that's very important. I think it's a big problem in American life is people think because you're rich you have some kind of like wisdom or like so there's something about you that has led to your wealth. But I grew up around plenty of wealthy people, and I found that just not to be the truth. And but I think like these people, they're terrible men. And they've proven to be terrible men, and they've. I don't know if you've followed like what they've done as with their writing. Have you looked at the LA Weekly? Hopefully, I assume not, because no one will ever read the LA Weekly again.
So, they want to replace the entire staff. We should say, for people that don't know, with unpaid contributors. Should I just backtrack and kind of
maybe
a little bit just for people? Okay. I know what you're talking about because I've been following the situation. But yeah, just backtrack a little bit.
Shout out to all the people that are still listening.
but now we know this is our real crowd here. Now that they've gotten through,
real heads.
Oh yeah,
strictly fan members.
Oh yeah, these are the deep cuts.
So I feel like I've told the story so many times because I'm just like screaming on the internet. But so if you're just following now. My name is Jeff Weiss. I was a columnist for the LA Weekly for 6 years. I was a writer for 10. I loved the LA Weekly. It was a place that I got to kind of speak to. I'm from Los Angeles. It was a place I got to speak to people from Los Angeles, people who lived in Los Angeles. My grandparents were raised in Los Angeles. It was a place I love very dearly, with all the good and bad that comes with it. And so about at the top of the year, it was announced that the LA Weekly was for sale. They were owned by Voice Media Group, a company that I have no good to say about, and I don't think anyone who's worked for them really would. They squeezed every last dime out of the weekly. They refused to invest in it properly. They had no ideas for innovation. Nothing. They just tried to make every dime they could. And to my knowledge, the paper was profitable every single year, and we'd been consistently told that the LA Weekly was kind of the crown jewel in the chain of newspapers that they had. They are trying to get out of media, more or less. They're trying to do native digital advertising, and so they're trying to basically divest themselves of all their properties and just shift direction. So instead of going, the price of the paper kept on dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. Instead of being a rational and sane and decent people that would go to the editorial staff and be like, hey, look, this is what's going on. Do you want to maybe talk amongst yourselves? Like, we need to get a buyer. Like, we are going to shut it down. Like, maybe you should look into it. Because I'm not going to divulge the sale price here, but it was very low. And it was the kind of thing that almost anybody who grew up in a city like LA, who has any kind of network, could probably have helped raise enough money. Or got to the right people to get to the right people to raise enough money. It really was a low sale price. Mm-hmm. And it was a fire sale price. And they didn't do that. Instead, they sold it to these men who no one even knew who they were. They formed an entity called Seminole Media. No one had any idea what that was. They had no publications in the past. They contacted no one at the paper. After purchasing it, some months go by. We still don't know who they are. Finally, they sneak in over Thanksgiving break when all the editors are gone, creeping like thieves in the night. And they tiptoe into the office, and they're like, oh, we got a paper, and they realize it. And then 2 days later, without any warning, the publisher gets an email around midnight. Everybody is fired. Half the advertising department is fired. Every editor is fired. Every staff writer but one gone. No exit interviews. No one comes in to shake their hands, thank them for their service, and excuse them. It's just the most callous. Mind you, 3 weeks before Christmas. And if you weren't in the union, you didn't get any severance pay from what I was told. So part of it was, of course, to bust the union, because we end up realizing who the owners are. Finally, after public pressure, they're forced to reveal themselves. The front man who's like the Scott Stapp of newspaper owners, is
you mean that as a compliment because Scott Stapp's so great, right?
yeah. I mean, actually, to be fair, like Brian Kaye was the man who was the owner. Scott Stapp at least was successful. Brian Kaye failed upwards. No, it's fine. Brian Kaye, it's fine. I hope he hears it. When his name is Googled for the rest of his life, it will be synonymous with failure. I hope he knows that because his life is going to be over. And I'm sorry. I don't have that much. I have, I don't have that much chill, but I don't think like you can in these kind of situations. And but I actually do have a lot of chills just in this. I just don't like. I don't like people being exploited. I don't like bullies. I really hate that. And I feel like American life is like just people being bullied and like just these like, it's like that old quote about like the future is like a boot crushing a person's neck. I feel like now it's like a Ferragamo fucking boot crushing someone's neck. I hate that shit. And so anyways, everyone is fired. They're too stupid to do an exit interview, which is like step one. It's like, okay, you are terrible men. Like you're firing, and they're all men, of course. And they fired every woman editor. They only kept one man who turned out to, you can Google Hello Aaron's tweet to find out what he was like. But they kept one person. They fired the publisher. They fired half the advertising department, and the paper, of course, was in shambles. I started I had a tweet rant that kind of went viral. I publicly resigned. 2 days later, Henry Rollins, legendary punk frontman, a Black Flag, resigned. A woman named April Wolf, who was our film critic, kind of also joined me on the warpath, along with a bunch of other really wonderful writers, Rebecca Hayescoat, Katie Bain, Max Bell. The list honestly goes on. We ended up staging a funeral for the paper. It gets covered in every publication that I can think of. And here we are, Stalingrad. About a month in, I'm still attacking them, and I'm going to keep on still attacking them. And the paper, no one has. It's sad. It's like a zombie. It's like I've been telling people, I'm like, those zombie movies where like it's like the hero or like the heroes or whatever, like they see their grandma and they're like, oh grandma, like I love you, and then they're like, but it's like not your grandma, it's like a zombie grandma, and she like tries to kill you, and you're like, oh, I gotta cut off grandma's head, and you're like, no, but it's not your grandma, and that's what I was like, it's like, this is not what I love, it's pathetic. They have, it's really hard, and like that's the thing that's so frustrating is it's like I've edited a website called Passion and Life for 12 years. I was like one of the first music blogs. I taught so many kids how to write, or help them learn how to be better writers, I should say, because a lot of them already knew how to write. But it's hard. It's really hard to run a publication. My publication has never been profitable. I had interest at one point in turning it profitable, but at the end of the day, like I'm probably going to go for a crowdfunded model because I'm not interested in kind of running like a massive publication. I wasn't interested necessarily trying to turn it into like a Vice or Pitchfork, and I have so much respect for the people that did, that do that. But it's really difficult, and to think that you can buy an alt weekly in 2017 and do that is just unthinkable. And then it probably should be mentioned that all the people who bought it, of course, were ultra conservative, right-wing people from Orange County who had no investment or relationship with the city of Los Angeles. Brian Kaye served as the vice president of the Claremont Institute, which is an ultra-conservative think tank in Claremont that produced people like Andrew Breitbart, Chuck Johnson, James O'Keefe. I believe it's O'Keefe. It might be James Keefe. I think it's James O'Keefe. Who's behind Project Project Veritas. And that shit is sinister. And like, you shouldn't be buying a progressive publication. Like, you know what it's about. And of course, I call, we pulled their card. Orange County Weekly did some great reporting on the list of donations that these men had given to, and it was just a real haunted house of ghouls. Like Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, somebody gave $25,000 to the Donald Trump for Victory Committee. Pete Wilson, who's behind Prop 187. Dana Rohrabacher, who's the pro-Putin politician from Dana Point, who was like very pro-weed, and like it was a lot of people are like, well, why do you think they did that? I'm like, I honestly think it's two things. I think they did have an ideology. Brian Kaye, his former job was as the he was the opinion editor and op-ed page editor of the Orange County Register and the Southern California News Group. And the Southern California News Group is the long story, but it's basically owned by a company called Digital First Media that owns all these like small community newspapers all throughout the West, which is then owned by a company called Alden Global Capital, who's owned by who's basically just owned by a man named Randall Smith, who's like this like 75-year-old hedge fund billionaire that like buys like $60 million of real estate in Palm Beach every year. It's disgusting, and that's what that's the story of media in the 21st century. It's these men just taking advantage and squeezing every dime that they can, $1 million here, $1 million there, out of these media properties that are it's enshrined in the Constitution. I know it's been said a lot over the last year, but that is real. And, like, I do believe in I write for the Washington Post a lot, and, like, that's a brilliant slogan, democracy dies in darkness. And that's what these people are trying to accomplish because it serves their ends. If there's no one covering, shady real estate developers, or these, one of the men is a boutique hotel developer, which is kind of a front, because if you look into his politics and his political donations, it's kind of ghastly. But yeah, I don't think real estate developers have served this country well. If you look at who's in the Oval Office right now, and I think we need to be vigilant about it and fight it because it's dark, and it's important for, I think, people to recognize that. And this isn't like, you live in southern Indiana, so it's like, I'm sure, like, your perspective is different than mine because, you're kind of, I've been to southern Indiana, and it's pretty, it's obviously a very conservative place outside of Bloomington, and, or I guess that's northern Indiana, right? But,
outside of my apartment, it's very conservative.
Very conservative. Yeah, and that's real, and, like, it's, there's, it's funny. The Daily Caller hit me up for a quote, maybe the story. Honestly, I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, Tucker Carlson's paper, and I looked at it, Jesus Christ. So, I thought it was important to talk to them because I do think it's important to talk to people because I think it's important for, especially liberal people, to like tell, like conservative people that you are not evil for having your beliefs. That does not necessarily make you evil. You are evil for your moral decisions, for the way you treat other people, for what kind of energy and negativity you bring into the world, And just because somebody's conservative, like Mitt Romney's an evil man. I disagree with all of his politics, but okay, you know what I mean? Like, he's brought Obamacare to Massachusetts before it was called Obamacare. So he's not, even like a man like John McCain, like, I disagree with a lot of what he's done, but, obviously it seems that there's a spinal cord, some kind of principle there, regardless of whether I agree with it or not. And I think every journalist has understood that, there's been tons of conservative people that have owned publications. I mean, Rupert Murdoch has owned, he owned the Village Voice, I believe, for a long time, and that's fine. If your compact as an owner is with the readers and, obviously profitability. But when that bleeds into the agenda of a publication and when you're trying to exploit, the public trust that someone's built, then that's when it kind of becomes, a completely different situation. And also, I might add, the sheer incompetency. It's hard to watch. Something I have 10 years of archives for Daylight Weekly. And, I'm really proud of it, and I think I did some good work. I wrote cover stories on DJ Quick, Freddie Gibbs, Tyler the Creator. I covered the Jerkin movement, which is a phenomenon that produced YG, who's another huge rapper from LA. A lot of big stories. The Doors, like I did a big story where I interviewed all the surviving members of the Doors, and around LA Woman. So, I have a certain proprietary relationship with LA Weekly, so I guess that explains the sensitivity. But
yeah, but we should probably explain too that because yesterday was January 1st, and recreational marijuana, of course, became legal in California for sale, and we also have some investors involved here that are involved in the marijuana industry. So can you explain that connection a little bit?
Yeah, which is super sad because I spent my entire life waiting for weed to be legal, and now it's exploited by the worst people. I'm like, oh, sobriety is cooler than these men. Fuck. So yeah, one of the men is like some marijuana lawyer or something. I don't know. Like, whatever. And but I have covered the weed industry. I actually appreciate a weed column that got a little political that they kind of took away from me after like 2 columns, I think, but many years ago. But yeah, it's pretty obvious that it was a two-pronged approach. They thought they could just fire the staff, carry on the skeleton thing, occasionally slip in, a libertarian-esque op-ed thing, maybe attacking a teachers union, or which is the biggest donor of the Democrats to the Democrats of California, or they thought, maybe we'll attack Maxine Waters from the left, or support third-party candidates, split the vote, that sort of thing. I think the other business strategy was just like this, we'll be the new high times, bruh. And good luck. It's just also what is the appetite for weed journalism? How much? It's what do you who needs to read about weed? You just smoke it. What is the market? I don't think Wine Spectator is the most bustling market in the world. And it's how many times can you be a sour diesel versus this new strain? Shut up. Shut the fuck up. It's condescending to smokers because I still smoke. I still smoke, but I was the biggest smoker. I was smoking every day. Every single word I ever wrote for the LA Weekly till maybe 2 years ago was high. And really, really high. And but fuck you. Get off my turf, motherfucker. That's not, and that's not gonna work either because fucking smokers aren't that stupid. They're they're normal ass people, especially not in LA. I don't know. I'm eventually going to start calling up all these. We have been calling up these dispensaries, and we're going to keep calling up these dispensaries, and because what dispensary wants to be the one that's I don't know, I'm giving money to a bunch of Trump supporters. Who needs that in Southern California? My dad, has his own conservative viewpoints that I vehemently disagree with. He's somewhere in the middle. But he's all over the place, and but even he was I don't understand why a bunch of conservative men would buy a paper in LA. You have to serve the needs of the community. It's just square one. So now, of course, they're oh, we're really liberal. I don't know where these fake news things are coming from. And I'm dude, you're moderating a panel on Obama's foreign policy disasters. What are you talking about? You're literally tweeting how much you want to play softball with Chris Christie, or it's the whole thing is just preposterous and just the most fire-fest level incompetency. And it's such a shame and tragedy for the city of Los Angeles to have to go through this, because it's I didn't even mention that. One of the other things I should to backtrack was one of these men, as soon as they bought the paper, goes, well, Los Angeles is really a cultural capital the way that New York or San Francisco is. Meanwhile, this guy's from Arcadia and lives in Dana Point, which if you're not from LA, one is a suburb, it's this white bread suburb 25 miles east of LA that has no bearing on LA. Another one, Dana Point, is an hour and a half south, and it's just like an anthropomorphic Starbucks, with a pottery barn, it's just so stupid. And I hate them, and I hate what they've done, and I hate where we're at as a culture that this is a reality, and this is just sort of my I'm not taking this shit anymore is my network moment. We're just I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it, because
right. Well, there's kind of a larger narrative happening all over the country too, because of course the Washington City paper was up for sale just recently.
Thank God
and that was the last minute kind of save the day situation, because wasn't Ben Carson's chief of staff or something going to buy that for a minute? Kind of
Armstrong Williams. It was Ben Carson's best friend or something. Yeah, it was totally nefarious. Come on, they think we're really stupid, and and the city paper got shut down in Baltimore. The Houston Press got shut down. It's basically Creative Loafing in Atlanta now has one staffer. As of this last week, the Village Voice basically no longer exists in any meaningful form. It's been all out. LAist and Gothamist were shut down with the flip of the switch, not even giving the writers and editors a chance to save their archives. It's really dark, and journals, I don't know, they're gonna have to start fighting, and we're gonna have to. We can't take this line down, and the people that read these, we're gonna all have to there is some civic responsibility that we're all gonna have to come to grips with, and to make things better, because this is a war. I do feel it's a civil war without bullets, and whether it's right or left, or whether it's like the rich versus the poor, it might be a little bit of both, but it's real, and it's not like, it's not like sulking on Twitter is like not going to do anything. So that was my goal with this, is like, okay, what can we do? We can start calling advertisers. We shut down this event called Sip and Sweet that they did. That was told they lost a lot of money. Well, Tacolandia was another big event that they had every year. A man named Bill Esparza, shout out to him. I'm sure he's not listening, but if he was, it's cool because he shut down the event. And there were things like that. Like, I wasn't writing to the LA Weekly to make a lot of money. Like, I got paid a fraction of what I paid from other places to write to the LA Weekly, but I did it because there is as I said, that kind of relationship that you have with your city and the ability to speak to your city in a kind of meaningful way that you can't necessarily do it as a national publication. Mm-hmm. And I think all the writers were like that. No one was getting paid the highest rate at the LA Weekly. And, so I know there's bigger things in the world to think about when Donald Trump is tweeting nuclear threats at Kim Jong-un, but, that doesn't necessarily recuse us from following up and kind of making sure that we have a local media to cover these swindles and heists and culture that is important. LA, there's so many artists that I covered over the years, so many rappers, so many, singers and just musicians, and that they got that break in the LA Weekly. So many writers got their chance in LA Weekly, and that goes for all these alternative weeklies. And, I can't tell you how many times I'd hear about a rapper who was popular in a small, in a regional place, and I'd Google around, and the only story written about them was in the local weekly, where they'd be 10 rappers you need to know from whatever city, and then I'd listen, and I'd be like, that's cool, I just discovered 3 rappers I love, and 2 years later they'd be national stars. And it's important, it's important that it goes beyond it. You have to cover, reporters are going to where they come from. It's different than a national publication is calling you up on the phone and you're doing a 45-minute phoner versus you're going to the hood. I went to Compton with DJ Quick. I went everywhere, I went to every hood. I went to Watts to do a story on Local, which is the new Roy Choi restaurant. It's you would, as a reporter, you're forced to have a better understanding of your city, and that no longer exists because it's dead. The LA Weekly's dead. All these other alt weeklies are dead, and I'm terrified for honestly the future of journalism. It's very scary, and I think we can't let ourselves be consumed by the fear, because I think that's the most negative thing that we can ultimately do is let them win.
For sure. And, it's interesting that this is happening for you right now, because also across town we've got the LA Times, but just about to have their unionization vote. We've got, a lot of, and we got all these websites pivoting to video, and it's a terrifying time to be in journalism. And you're right. It's just you either sit down and cower, or you just kind of take the reins and try to do something about it.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if we win. It does matter if we win. Of course, you know what I mean? Of course it matters if we win. But, thinking that you're going to lose doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. And I've always believed that. You know what I mean? It's I don't know, the old story of Masada, in Israel, or Palestine, or whatever. I'm not going to get into the Jew. I don't want, it's a minefield. I don't really want to say. It's a powerful story. It's a powerful story about how, the ancient Israelites were rebelling against the Romans.
Right.
And they retreated up, I don't really fuck with religious zealots, which they were, which is when the name zealots actually comes from. But, they're all right, we're going to all kill ourselves rather than, you kill us.
Yeah.
And that to me is an inspiring story, and people still talk. You know what I mean? It became a folklore myth for the Israelis and everything. Mm-hmm. And which I'm not endorsing anything.
I understand.
People get so crazy, but and I understand why. But if you ever want to do an Israeli and Palestine conflict, you can do that. But there's no winning. Everyone just gets mad at you.
Yeah, right.
There's no winning. You can't win. You just know what. So it's whatever. But
right.
But, it's just kind of. It's just fucking depressing, and it is pivoting the video, and it's I'll give you an example. I had a really interesting conversation with a young talented writer who, he's a Mexican American first generation kid who grew up in LA, and super smart, and I think he's going to be an amazing whatever he wants to be. But that's the point. Like, he would have been a writer 10 years ago. And now he has to be everything. You know, he has to do shows, he has to run a website, he has to do video, he has to do a podcast, all these things. And I've had to do them too. It's one of the reasons why I've kind of gotten out of the muck a little bit, even though I still feel very much in it. But, like, I had to do all these things, and I don't want to be on the internet ever. I didn't want to be on Twitter. It took me forever to be on Twitter. I hated it. And, but, like, I asked him, and I was like, hey, who are, like, the young, do you know of any other, like, young, like, people of color, like, about your age, or he's 25? And I was like, who are, like, you really believe in, who you think are really dope? And he's like, honestly, like, most of the people I know that are like my age that are really getting into it, they're not really writing in the same way. That maybe they'll have a blog, or maybe they'll have a Tumblr, or maybe they'll tweet, but it's like they're not writing like long form report features, because I don't even know where you'd start now. I don't know where I would have started if I couldn't have gotten into the LA Weekly. I mean, like, where does one start? I don't know. Like, how do you get into it? And it's like, what kind of a system are we building with the only people that can get a job are the people that go to journalism schools? I didn't go to journalism school. Like,
no, neither did I.
Yeah, and like I grew up, in like upper middle class, and my dad wasn't going to pay for that shit. Like, he wasn't, because it was expensive, and I wasn't going to take that. Well, I'm going to take $60,000 in debt to go to journalism school. I mean, props to everyone that does. Like, a bunch of really gifted people have come from it. And, like, props to them for assuming debt if they assume the debt. I mean, it's a big risk. I personally am not a debt person. Like, I don't want that. And I'm like, I do not want to be I don't want to be paying back to the university for the rest of my life. And, but that's real. And, like, where does one start? I mean, to be honest, I started because I started at a blog. But even then, like, it's like, I came from, like, nuclear family. My dad did fairly well. I knew that I had a little bit of a safety net in case I failed. Like, this is really a class thing as well, and that bothers me, because I think it's important that people from, like, all classes, like, that is a unique and valuable perspective that, maybe we'd understand the world a little bit better if people that came from, didn't come from money were able to go into journalism. And now this is just, without all weeklies in the chain, it's just another thing in the ecosystem. It's like they're really cutting everything up by the knees, because it's like, cool, well, you can write at the LA Times, and that's great. Like, I mean, I wrote for the LA Times. I got really lucky to get in there really young. And, but not everyone's going to get into the LA Times, and like, how does LA have, you look around, it's like, I remember when I first started writing for alt weeklies, this is 2007, like for writing, it's my first real break. And it was like City Beat, I think the Los Angeles Alternative Press was still around, LA Record had been going for a minute, already at that point. And then, like, I think there might have been, like, one or two more. There was a place called Entertainment Today that I think had just folded. It was, like, a weekly entertainment publication. They used to publish this, like, they would syndicate my blog posts, which are crazy and awful. Like, thank God they've all been destroyed, hopefully. But we're talking, like, 4 or 5 places that feel like LA, and they're gone. All of them are now gone. You have the LA Weekly and Los Angeles Magazine, and that's it. And Los Angeles Magazine is like, it's a great publication, but it's a monthly glossy. It's not. They're not going to write about the new 03 Burrito tape. They don't know who Draco is. And if they do, like, it'll be from someone that wrote the LA Weekly, because that's where people, like, learned and cut their teeth, and, like, actually, I don't want that to be conceived as a slight in any way. They actually just hired the Arts and Culture of LA Weekly. I think it's a great publication, but that's just kind of what I'm saying, though. Like, there needs to be a place to cover the underground, because that's where culture springs from. Mainstream culture is usually, like, underground culture with a polished veneer on it. And, it's where they steal from. And, you can almost pick any artist and like, you'd be like, oh, well, that's a major label artist stole from this underground artist that's, like, the regional legend. And, I talk about someone like DJ Quick, I mentioned him earlier. There's a cover story on him. You have to be from LA to really understand, like, the depth of, like, the connection that a DJ Quick or a Sugar Free or, like, even, like, a Corrupt necessarily has to the local audience. It goes deeper than just, like, this national relationship. I always said that Quick means more to LA, even though Dre is way more popular. Because Dr. Dre was for the world. DJ Quick was for LA, And I felt like that about LA Weekly. The LA Times was for the world, and LA Weekly was more, they both are for LA. It's a bad binary, so forgive me for that. But But I think like the LA Times was definitely more for like a mainstream audience, is a better way to put it. And the LA Weekly was more for an underground, younger audience. And I think they're both valid and important. And I think it's great when like the LA Weekly would do something that like the LA Times was covering, LA Times would do something the LA Weekly would cover. And it's like we need both. We need LAists. We need a lot more publications, because I mean, how is a city of 4 million people that's like, the capital of like, it's like a gateway to Asia. It's a really, in my opinion, like the cultural capital of America right now. How does that not have 3 or 4 papers covering it? And I honestly believe it's like, I think it's crazy mismanagement. I think it's these greedy publications, and they want to take every dime, and it's like, it's corporate ownership. And it's like, because I don't know about you, but like, if I made $1 million in profit like last year, if one man makes $1 million, you are rich. Mm-hmm. But when a corporate board that's accountable to their shareholders only makes $1 million, well, then your stock price is dropping. And that's not not everything should be owned by like a publicly traded company. That's ridiculous. I don't know where, like, I mean, I know when this happened, it all happened in the 90s, and it's partially neoliberalism and blah, 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 and nothing against Bill Clinton, who, has his flaws and is a man of his time. But I think we all need to get back to a point where it's like, I don't know, like there needs to be new ideas that like are accountable to the reality of the 21st century. I feel like we're approaching the world with like these obsolete lenses, and that's kind of like how I it's like that, and that's why like I don't think Bernie Sanders was the right man, but Bernie Sanders was closer to I think the way that a lot of young people felt, because my problem with him was I felt like he was coming out of break up the banks, like this like 1950s socialism, this like red baby socialism, whereas I think a more modern, moderate approach would, be effective. And I'm not talking, like some version of that's like accountable to modern realities. Because it's just like, I mean, there's a reason why like half of young people are like more, I think, are like half of millennials are more like down with Marxism. And it's like not like, I'm not necessarily like either or. I don't think the answer is one extreme, but it's just this culture. This culture feels like it's really been teetering out of control. And I guess like I don't know about you, but I've been feeling this for so long, at least years and years. Mm-hmm. And finally, this was the moment that kind of crystallized like this kind of growing agitation. I mean, obviously combined with Donald Trump being the president.
Well, of course.
That's just fucking insane. And like every day I'm like, God, he's so... There's not even the words. Like I need to like invent new words, like from the aliens that they just captured.
Yeah, I like how there's aliens now and nobody even cares anymore.
Who cares? Like who cares? You're like, okay, so the X-Files is real. Next, like I'm not gonna be killed with a nuclear reactor because honestly, I need to know because I have to finish my deadline. So it's like every day now is like where you're like, do I do my homework or not? Because, like, if it's all over, like, why do I go to school? It's like every day of our lives.
All I'm saying is, if I don't have to pay rent, the liquor store's right across the street. Just tell me.
Totally. It's like, what the fuck? And here we are. I was tweeting about it. I'm like, well, my year started off, my grandfather died, and at the end, I'm fighting Nazis at the local alt weekly. 2017, you really did it. And it's like, fuck. Are you kidding? But that's real. That's like, me. It's like I think a lot of people would like chalk this up to like, oh, hysterical snowflake, blah blah blah, and you're like, okay, you're broke, like, or like it's like it's funny, all the people that are saying that are like, all these conservative people. I'm like, you're struggling to get by too. Like I feel like we need to like kind of get rid of these. Like I mean, like and I'm guilty, of course, of being like it's a bunch of like Trump is supporting blah blah blah, but it's like. I think, which is true, and I mean it, but I think it's important that like people have to like get beyond labels, because it's like there needs to be like some kind of people's political party that's accountable and like, isn't just like trying to, like, I don't know, I'm going off on my tie. This is what it's like to hang out with me, like by the end of the night, like, can you not go off on your weird tirade? But it's just like, there needs to be something that, stops this. Like, none of these councilmen have said a fucking word from LA. And it's like, I don't know, like, let me run. I guarantee you if I ran, I mean, not like, I'm announcing my candidacy right now, but like, I know that if I ran for something, like, I would be like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, that's just wrong. And like, somebody needs to like in this world, like, have to stand up and be like, nah, that's not happening. And, I hope the only hope of this thing beyond like getting the paper back and like sending these people back to like a yacht in Orange County that sinks is off the coast of Newport Harbor. It'd be very poetic. It'll be like Arrested Development. I'm really excited about it. Hopefully 2018, give us some good. But the only thing I can really hope for is that I hope that people get inspired and do something. And like, I hope that like people in Atlanta like try to buy the paperback from the Creative Loafing owners. I hope that somebody wants to buy the Village Voice and like turn it into a legitimate publication again. Like I don't know if that'll happen, but I hope that it does, because I can't watch this and like not, and I just can't like Twitter age only does so much. I think like this is not this necessarily the newspaper thing, but this moment is sort of, this is our Vietnam, this is our Civil War, this is our World War II, this is our moment where we have to kind of, fight back against this kind of like encroaching darkness. Because, I always think back to, that the famous Baudelaire cliche, but it's like the devil's greatest trick is making you forget that that he exists. And it definitely does exist. And like, we've seen it, and like, Brian Kaye is the devil. Like, I mean that figuratively, but maybe metaphorically. I don't know. He looks like he could have. But that's real. And like, the devil is like a metaphorical concept. It's like a true notion of like, I don't know. It's like people have to we have to do better. And I guess like let's start here. And I want the paperback. I want people. I don't even care. I just want someone like decent and responsible. Like, honestly, the political agenda is like just keep it like honest. That's the most important thing, is keeping it honest. And like, I feel like we live in this like horrible thing where like we've lost the notion of what honesty is. I think we all know, but it's like the way that they've attacked the news. I mean, Donald Trump has systematically been on a campaign to destroy trust in the media, to the point of where like I'll talk to like my family members and they're like, oh, the Washington Post, that's fake news. I'm like, I write for them. What are you fucking talking about? Like, that's insane. And people think that now. And it's like, I've written for them. I've written for the LA Times. Like, I know what these publications are like. And they're a bunch of like decent people trying to like, no one's doing this for money. And no one's necessarily doing it for ideological needs. People are doing it because they have a dedication to telling stories and to like finding out what the truth is. And to watch it just get like systematically attacked over the last few years is just demoralizing and vicious and damning to where we are as a country. And I hope it's a momentary aberration. It's like, I was a history student, you realize there were 200 years of darkness, like the Middle Ages, that shit was not awesome. And put that on my epitaph. Middle Ages shit was not awesome.
In case y'all was wondering, not awesome.
Yeah. If you don't know, Charlemagne didn't kill it. But the Clovis, the Frankish dynasty, not the best. But yeah, there are periods of darkness, and I hope that if people pull out, if mankind has been able to survive these periods of darkness, it's because people have banded together and believed in ideas that were bigger than themselves and resisted. And I think that's what this is about. This is a symbol. What I'm doing and what we're doing is a symbol of resistance, and I think those are important, because I think that's what people gravitate towards. That's what people can understand. The whole arc of human history is a bunch of like people like screaming in the darkness, and so hopefully somebody like, my dream would be like someone 15 would like listen to this and be like, I am going to do something. I'm going to start my own publication so that this doesn't happen again. Because we all have to do better.
Yeah.
Included.
Well, I mean, I understand your strategy with targeting certain events and sponsors and that. On the other end of it, though, have you tried to approach anyone about buying it? If it were to be for sale, because I was for sale for a while. You said it went for a very low price. You're trying to, force advertisers out, and now, trying to maybe convince them to sell. But is there someone that could buy it that you could? I mean, I don't know if you've gotten that far. I'm pretty sure people would buy it. People will buy a publication that is like, you could crowdfund it, honestly, and I think that would be another way. There are ways. It's like that's why I said, like, we're gonna have to find a new model, and like I think crowdfunding is possible. I think you hold fund. I mean, like, who's to say, like, well, you couldn't get Eli Broad to donate like a painting to fund the LA Weekly for a year?
You know what I mean? If you really were trying, like, there are so many ways to do it. There's like silent auctions. I mean, what these PACs can raise hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and you can't get $2 million in operating costs for the LA Weekly. I just don't believe that, you know. And I think, like, again, that's a failure of imagination on our part. You know, we have to reimagine, like, the future, because capitalism is not working well. You know, and in many, you know, I don't know if you saw the Guardian story, but it's like the income inequality just gets greater and greater and greater, and something like the LA Weekly is probably emblematic of that, where it's like you can't wait for your Jeff Bezos to come in and, like, save the day and be your, like, Mr. Big, you know. And I think, like, that's what everyone was hoping for. But I do believe that, yeah, I mean, I won't get into the logistics of it, but, like, yes, there are people that would buy the paper, and if they weren't, then I would kind of try to spearhead something to raise money and turn it into a nonprofit of some sort. Or, I mean, that would be my dream, to be honest with you. Like, I would love to turn it into a nonprofit and be able to have it be accountable to the community and have kind of a board of people that kind of look over it. I mean, I'm in so deep right now that I'm like, I feel like some kind of responsibility to making sure it functions if it does get sold. But, you know, I want to be an editor. That's the thing. I never want to be an editor. I certainly don't really want to be an editor. But, you know, I want to make sure it's okay. So hopefully, something good will come of it. I don't know. They have my email. Like, they know they can hit me up. Like, if they hit me up tomorrow and be like, okay, we're ready to sell, like, then I'll be, you know, I'm sure I could get a group of investors that would buy it. I'm 99% sure. I just don't see how anyone would, because you have to have community goodwill to be looking alt weekly. You can't. I mean, any publication like that. I mean, it goes. You have to, like, be loved by your community, because who's going to take ads in a hated publication? That's the other thing too. It's like, what advertiser could look at their comments and be like, yes, that's it's like the toxic property. Who wants to be affiliated with that? But when you have a good publication that, like, has that trust, that has that quality, then I think you will get advertisers returning, because they know that it's like, what they're going to take. You could take, like, $10,000 billboard, or you can take, like, a $3,000 print ad. They're both kind of valuable, and but you also know that it's like, you know, and that's another thing too. If you became a nonprofit, you know, like, you could take an ad, advertisers could write it off. I mean, they can write it off, I guess, anyways. It doesn't really matter, but, you know, who knows? Now that the corporate taxes are so low.
Yeah, right.
Who fucking knows anymore? Why? Yeah, and I'm sure everybody but the workers will be awash in profit.
Right.
But yeah, no, I do. I mean, I would. I don't know if they know that they're going to fail, but I hope they do. But you know, they're delusional and stupid enough to buy this publication. So they're probably delusional and stupid enough not to know that they've already lost. But it's over. Like, it is over. Like, I will keep going, but, like, they're fatally wounded. Like, you can't run a publication with doing what they've done. You know, they've insulted the city of Los Angeles. They've insulted the readers. They've insulted the writers. They've insulted the community. You know, like, just like the community of, like, people with sentient minds. Anyone blinking, you know, would know that, like, it's a dead paper. I mean, I wish you could pick it up. I mean, it's honestly the worst paper I've ever read in my life. I've read some bad publications, but honestly, like, I mean, I've been all around the country, and I've read some really bad alt weeklies, and this is somehow worse. It's amazing. I've never seen anything this bad.
Well, weren't they putting new datelines on stories?
They're putting new datelines on stories. Yeah. They hired a film guy that was writing rape porn, more or less. Huh. They had one of Brian Kaye's Claremont Institute hack some, like, poor kid that, like, where he was also with the Cato Institute, like, it's Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, one of the two, I don't know, like, some ultra-conservative think tank. Like, he was writing for them. They have an article today on the 10 albums you need to listen to for this year, local albums, and it's like Lita Ford's Suicidal Tendencies, like, and, like, Kanye as, like, a local album. It's like, what? What is that? Kanye? What?
Famous LA native Kanye West.
Yeah, famous LA native. Yeah, it's like, and he doesn't even live in the city limits. I get you could be like, it's kind of like your church, but, like, not really. I don't think you can pick up an LA Weekly in Calabasas either way. It's fucking ridiculous and stupid, and, like, they should just give up and save themselves from being permanent. Like, save it. I mean, they're going to end up the biggest failure in journalistic history. It goes without saying. So, I mean, or at least in Los Angeles journalistic history, I don't think there will ever be a failure like this dramatic. But congratulations to them. They did it. You know, I guess if you can't be good at anything, you should be the best at being the worst. They've done that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of sounds, you know, one of my questions I was going to ask you is, are you worried about this affecting your career otherwise with other publications? But it kind of sounds like you've reached a breaking point of some sort. So.
I don't care. I mean, like, honestly, if some publication like wanted to like not hire me because like they didn't like, because I spoke my mind and was honest and like we tried to fight for like decency and integrity in journalism, which is like, and like equity and like treating journalists like human beings, and like I wouldn't want to write for that publication. But I mean, from what I've heard, like, I mean, a lot of people like have, I mean, I've gotten more like positive feedback about this than probably any story I've ever written, or as much. And you know, ultimately I would hope that like my writing would kind of speak for itself, or you know, and that I think that's the most important thing. You know, people want good writing, and you know, I really care about this shit, and like, you know, I'd rather people be like, you know what, he's an asshole, but he's honest, than like to be liked by everyone. Like that doesn't concern me. Like, you know, I've never been liked by everyone, and when I get liked, it's wonderful, and I appreciate anyone who has ever read my stories or even favorited them, or just, you know, been like silently just been like, whatever, like I fuck with that dude. Like, you know, that's kind of all the people that I always gravitated towards. I just, you know, when I was a kid, like I just was like, that person's honest, that person is like real, and I don't mean like real and like keeping it real like some kind of fake like authenticity credo. I mean just like in terms of like staying true to yourself and what you believe in. And I tell myself that every day, and I just, you know, I hope that but I don't see that affecting my career. And like honestly, I don't give a fuck. Like I'd rather, like, if I got blackballed for this, then I'd rather do something. I'm not writing for. I'm a journalist that I need money to survive, but you know, I don't write because for the money.
Yeah,
it's not because. Yeah, like for me, it's like it's about, you know, I have so many other bigger things that I'd love to write, and for me, it's like, you know, and I hate anyone who calls themselves an artist because it's so annoying. But you know, it's like it is about like the art on some level, and what I'm trying to do is do stuff outside of, you know, like, you know, I'm working on a book, and I've been like I've been working on a book for a while, and you know, that's what I always got into. You know, I wrote a novel when I was a kid. You know, I was 20 years old. I started writing a novel, and so I got into writing. I only got into journalism as a way to pay my bills, and because I loved writing and I loved telling stories and I loved LA. It was a way to kind of fuse all those different things. So that's what's most important to me, is kind of doing good work, because I feel like if you do good work and you're honest, then like you'll be okay. And you work really hard, you know, and those are the only things I really try to stay focused on. And when I'm not like trying to bring down fascism at the local, the old weekly.
Right. For sure. Well, I mean, I'd be remiss, though, if we didn't mention Combat Jack, because, you know, that tore me up, because I thought, of course, the Combat Jack show, and then more recently the Mogul podcast was amazing. And, of course, you have a special connection to that because you were a part of his podcast network for a time. So.
Yeah. I love that dude. I'm heartbroken about Combat Jack. Yeah. Honestly, like, he was, you know, everything I said online, like, I meant, like, what he did was, you know, no different than like a Studs Terkel or an Alan Lomax. You know, he was really like doing oral history at the most profound level, and he was an encyclopedia. You know, I said that, you know, he could tell you about like 90s rap, New York minutia, like Paradise Garage, you know, and he'd go to in the 80s, and you know, he was a real first generation, like, you know, New York hip hop. Like he became an icon. You know, he was there for all these different things, whether it was like these you know, Bronx jams. I don't, you know, he's from Brooklyn, but you know, I'm sure he Brooklyn jams, I'm sure too. And just he was there, and this deep reservoir of emotion, and he understood hip hop on a level that was just so impressive to me. You know, especially someone who's covering it. You know, and I'm like a white dude that grew up in like LA, but like I didn't grow up in the hood, and Jack like really had such a fundamental understanding, and those are the voices that are so important. And I think like that's why he was so important, you know, because he was like hip hop, he embodied it, you know, he reflected that spirit. And obviously he was a New York guy, but there was that, you know, that universalist spirit kind of that he was interested, you know, he would like talk to his kids about what should I be listening to, you know, and he just there was a profound love and joy that radiated from Reggie. And you know, like it was funny. Like I did my like Combat Jack episode, and I was like so stoked. You know, like my friend Getty from Toronto. Hopefully he's listening. Getty always listens. So shout out Getty. But he used to be dead, and Getty used to be the managing editor of Potholes in my blog, a great blog that no longer exists. Because blogs, the economic model is fucked, and like you used to be a crazy person like me and do balls like lose money. You know, like I just lose money every year because I just believe in it, and I'm compulsive. And like I love what I'm saying. I think it's great, and I think we have to keep doing it. Or you know, but to Getty, you know, just he was on Jack or Reggie. And he was just on Reggie. Come on, get Jeff West in your show. Get Jeff West in your show. Finally, like he's like, yeah, do it. And so like I did, you know, I was in New York. You know, I had a book reading with my friend Evan McGarvey at I think it was Housing Works, and it was amazing. And like all these New York people came out, and I was like, you know, wow, like I can't believe people showed up. But really, the highlight was getting on Combat Jack. You know, showed up, and I brought a couple of my homies. And we were all like, kind of like, you know, we're like adults, and we're like totally geeked out. But you know, we were like, this is tight. You know, this is great. I'm gonna be on Combat Jack. You know, and like, I did it, and of course, like I was just like this. I talked way too fast. Everyone's like, "Is he on cocaine?" I didn't ask any questions. Probably every podcast I do, I'm you're like, just let him go. But like at the end of it, he was like, you know, I think I never listened to the original like first 20 minutes because it's just so I get so embarrassed during people. I think the whole first 20 minutes are like they're like, "Was he on cocaine?" I like to say I've never done cocaine. I'm not a coke guy in any way, so know the answer. You know, but you know, I did it, and afterwards, you know, just like, you know, he's a guy with like I think Reggie had 3 or 4 kids, and he could have gone home and been with his wife, and like, you know. But he like wanted to hang out with us, and like, you know, I don't think because we were so cool. I think because he was just like that kind of dude, and he just, you know, we were talking about rap, and he hung out with us like 1:30 in the morning, and we were staying at my friend's place, and he drove us back to my friend's place. And, you know, when after he died, we were just talking about it, and we're like, can you believe he did that? Like, can you believe he dropped us off? Like, what an amazing guy, and just so sincere and just passionate. And I guess that's maybe what I gravitate towards, you know, like I'm saddled with the same passion for life because I picked it in 2005 when I was like a kid, and now I'm like not a kid, and like I know my fucking name, and it's not going away. But that's what it's about. It's about that passion and that like that commitment to like these ideas, and Reggie just embodied that. And like I know that like, you know, I wish that Reggie was, you know, around, because I know that like he was just one of the realistic ones, and it's such a loss for all of us, you know, and I mean, of course, his family and friends first and foremost. It's such a loss to like hip hop fans, and you know, I think I said that was like it's like when Big L died, or it's when like, you know, Big Pun died, or more Guru. I know, really like a Guru, but if Guru died like in his prime, you know, and that's kind of just like where like he had just so much wisdom to transmit, and so many stories, and faith. Like, you know, I'm so happy that he has all these podcasts that at least he leaves behind that we can re-listen to. And, but I mean, like you said, the Damon Dash episodes, you know, alone, that's. Like, my God, those Dave Dash episodes, you know, where he's just like yelling at fucking like Just Blaze for the fake jersey. Oh my God, like, oh my God, what is happening? This is amazing. And again, like, I think, you know, that only happened. Like, you can't just do a podcast and it just happens. You have to be that person. You have to make these people feel comfortable. You have to like be Reggie Aussie, you know, or I say Aussie, you know, I'm not mispronouncing it, forgive me, but you have to be that kind of guy with that credibility, that, you know, authority. So many times I had to be like that. Me and No Can Do used to do our Shots Fired podcast, and they'd be like, what's a podcast? It was like 4 years ago, and I'd be like, you know, like Combat Jack? I'm like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, it's like Combat Jack. So many people we would not have gotten on the show because it wasn't without Combat Jack. And just like a legend, and I'm so sad. I'm like, honestly, like, it's the loss of Combat Jack is just, I mean, there's been a lot of hard ones. I mean, Fife Dog and Prodigy was both like that, where I'm just like, ugh. I mean, I love Prince, I love David Bowie, they're amazing, my favorite artists of all time, but like, Fife and Prodigy were like my childhood, and Jack was just, you know, Reggie was just, I mean, he was just the god, you know, he was the GOAT, and it's like we are, you know, I really think about this a lot, you know, because obviously now, like the last few years, it's just been like, oh, another person dies, let me mourn for 2 days publicly, and like, you know, feel embarrassed about like this weird thing where you're like, oh, it's got a lot of retweets for capitalizing someone's death. Like, I hate the internet from it. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
it's weird because it's like
you don't want it because of that. You know what I mean? That's not why you did it.
Yeah, I mean, like, grieving is just like, you know, it's like, I think we that is the beautiful thing about the internet. It's like, it's just like people, you know what I mean? We'll have this conversation because of it, because I'll be pouring out like my emotions, and you'll see it, and you'll be like, we'll talk about it later, and we'll have that. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise, it's just internalized. You know, I think that we are obviously all like social creatures and like want, you know,
right,
feel each other's like pain and like kind of commiserate. But yeah, it's just. The Reggie thing, man, it's just, God, like, it just feels like kind of like when Prodigy died, sort of, where you're just like, it feels like exactly like how when Prodigy died, because you're like, you had so much more life in you. You had so much greatness.
Right.
I don't know. But I guess what I was to double back, because I'm such a rambler, but I guess the point is you have to honestly, if you like love someone, you know, in that way, you loved their work and you loved what they represented. I think it's your job as a human being, and especially as like a writer or a creative person, to carry on that legacy in whatever way, you know, you think that does them justice and does their legacy dignity.
Right.
And you know, and that's kind of what I've always, you know, it's like we don't, like, what we do doesn't come from nowhere. We are all, no matter how original you think you are the sum of your influences, more or less. And so, you know, on some level, you know, I think it's important that all of us like really like, you know, do justice to what Reggie stood for, which was, I think, like, no bullshit. It was honesty. It was like, it was loving. It was being informed and knowledgeable, and not just be, you know, and just like, and like going deeper. You know, he would always go deeper. You would never get the surface level shit. It was never the Wikipedia. And I think it's an important thing to remember, because, you know, it's so easy to be like a automatic expert on the internet. You know, it's like someone dies and it's like, oh, well, if I just Google the second album, third song, and then write about it, then like I can show people, you know, it's like, fuck that. It's like that. The beautiful thing of the internet is you have the ability now to be an expert on anything you want. You can teach yourself. You can be an autodidact. That's great. Like, I consider myself one. I didn't go to writing school. My teachers, I'm still learning. You know what I mean? Like, I was reading a book by Bernard Malamud before, like, you called me, and I was like, trying to learn. And I'm like, you know, it's just like always trying to learn. I think Reggie was one of those people, you know, and he the beauty of what he did was he allowed us to learn with him, you know, and to pass on his knowledge, you know, because he had so much knowledge, but you could tell, like, he was so interested. And that's, I think, what it's about, you know, like, he so wanted to know everything. And there's not enough people like that. And like, there's no one I ever respect more than Reggie, you know. He's one of the greatest. And I'm happy you asked about it, because honestly, like, I feel like I'm like, whenever I talk to someone about Reggie, I'm just like, ugh. You know, and I don't want to make it seem like we were like really close. I mean, we were very cool. You know, we would, like, you know, DM each other sometimes, and email each other sometimes. And, you know, I was on his show, and, you know, I'm friends with Chris, who ran a Speakers Network. So I did definitely, you know, it was somebody I knew personally and fairly well. But just what he, you know, I think what he brought was just something that I think all of us, I mean, that's why you asked about him, because just there is that connection, right, with the podcast.
Well, yeah, you feel like even if you haven't met him, you know him, you know, from the stories and all that, the knowledge and everything. So, but I mean, let's end it on a more fun note. I have to ask you this: top 5 MCs, go.
Right now or all time?
All time.
Okay, all time. All right, give me a second. I mean, Ghostface. You have to say Jay. I mean, they're boring. They're always boring. It's the most boring. It's like, you know, to say, I mean, a Ghost is, you know, I love Ghost. I have to say Ghost. I have to say Jay-Z. Because Jay-Z, like, you have to. I mean, you have to say Tupac and Biggie, honestly, to me. And, like, then you go for, like, then you do the Southerner. It's like Southern rap. You know, it's like, you know, you have to have a West Coast guy. You have to have an East Coast. You find 2 East Coast guys. You know, I'm going to say Scarface. I feel like I love Andre, and that would be like, you know, I prefer, I mean, if we're going to be like, whose discography would you prefer? You know, would you prefer the Outkast discography, or like Scarface and the Ghetto Boys? By a slight edge, I'm going to go with Outkast, because I think Outkast is just they might be the greatest act in music history. Like, honestly, like they very well might be. Like, cool. I mean, the Beatles are amazing, but like, I don't know. The Beatles don't have an Equimini. You know? Like, I love them. They're amazing.
Show me the Beatles, Spodioti, Dope, Delicious, or whatever.
Totally. Like, I mean, She Said is great.
Yeah, true,
like,
true.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, Where's Your Chunky Fire, John Lennon? But, But I'm gonna go with Scarface because honestly, I feel like he's just like sort of like, and I feel when you go top 5, you're ultimately like they're not your favorites.
Mm-hmm.
My favorites are, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like because you know what I mean? Because the truth of the matter is, your favorites are going to be just whoever like you heard when you were 13 to 23, which I guess in this case is a lot of these guys,
right?
But I do think I don't know. Like, I mean, I could understand why. I mean, if I was like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I get why kids put like a Lil Wayne or Kendrick in there. You know, like that's fine. Like that's how it's gonna go. Like, you know, old people shouldn't just be like, how dare you put Lil Wayne in your top 5? It's like, yeah, of course they were like 13 in 2007. What do you fucking expect? Like, that was what made them love hip hop. So who are you to tell them not to?
Sure.
Be thankful that they think Lil Wayne is the fucking top 5. That's what a lot of hip hop just fucking flourish and it's not become like classic rock where it's just like dead. Like, you know what I mean? I don't need to hear a bunch of bands trying to sound like the 60s, even though I fuck with plenty of them. You know, it's not what like brings it forward. Hip hop is, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people like in the future they're going to be like, yeah, Young Thug's top 5, and you know what? They're not wrong. But I mean, for me, like, I mean, I don't know, I'm a writer, so it's like, good luck writing anything better than Supreme Clientele. I mean, that's like the holy grail, right? And Jay-Z, I mean, forget it. Like, that guy's like, what? I mean, he is just, that discography is just, no one has more hits. You know, no one has, I mean, he wrote like a Where I'm From in 1997. He's writing like the story of OJ in 2017. Like, you know what? That's unparalleled. Tupac, forget it. I mean, that's like he represents like the black experience in America and like the revolutionary mentality and like West Coast rap and like somehow East Coast rap and just like, I mean, the struggle and just, my God, like you just, you know, like you don't get a Boosie without Tupac, you know, and then Biggie, I mean, like, Biggie to me is just like, that's just perfection. Like, Biggie never has, there's no wrong syllables in Biggie. You know, like let's forget every word, which is perfect. Except for, like, there's a couple lines, maybe, like, you know, a couple, like, fucking people with broomsticks. Could have done the line where he's like, I'd suck his daddy. It's a weird line. It's a weird line. Nothing against it. It's just weird. It's a strange line. I don't know if I would have written it if I were him. I think he probably would agree. But like, he's such a, again, that voice, like, I mean, like, I mean,
I don't know. Ever since I had a daughter, I really can't sing that electrical tape around the daughter line so well anymore.
Yeah, totally. Old school music, going low. Yeah, totally. But it's just like that, you know, old, like, it's just the way he, like, just the syllables. Like,
no, how he puts it together. So I know what you're saying.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that voice. Like, I mean, that voice, like, Jesus Christ, like that, like, thunder of God fucking voice. I mean, Tupac too had that voice. And Scarface too. I mean, Scarface is an Old Testament prophet. And, like, to me, that's, like, what he represents. You're like, oh, shit. Look on the horizon. There's the hurricane. There's the tornado. There's Scarface. You know, like, bring, like, just, I mean, Scarface was Tupac's favorite rapper, so I feel like Tupac's one of my favorites. Like, you gotta pay, you know, there's a reason why.
Yeah.
I just, like, I mean, what he did with the Ghetto Boys, I mean, dude practically invented Southern rap with that shit, you know, so it's like...
Also, can we just mention that Scarface and the Ghetto Boys had the best album covers ever?
Ever.
Mean, Mr. Scarface is Back is one of my favorites. I love We Can't Be Stopped. Just again and again, like...
Yeah, I mean, is there any more harrowing image than them wheeling fucking with Bill with one eye out? Like, you're like... What? Like, if nothing else, your top 5 for that alone. Like, better. I mean, there's some cool album covers in 2000. I mean, Kendrick has some great covers. Jesus Christ, nothing is like that, you know. So I mean, that would have to be my top 5.
Oh yeah, well that's a good one. Well, well, hey, I appreciate what you do, and thank you so much for talking with me for so long, and I hope we can talk again soon. So
yeah, I'm around. I'm like, I'm always like I said, like, I'm gonna wind up till I just like fucking just be like, ask me one question, and I'll talk for an hour and a half, and then at the end of
no, you're the easiest guest I've ever had, so it's all good.
Yeah. It's my weakness is my strength, and my strength is my
That's right. Absolutely. Well, it was a blast talking to you, dude, and I hope you have a good night.
Yeah, likewise, you too.
All right, later.
Bye.
If you enjoy this podcast, there are several ways to support it. I have a Patreon account, which can be found at www.patreon.com/Rob Burgess Show Patreon. I hope you'll consider supporting in any amount. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Facebook, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, and RSS. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgesshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. And if you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. I have no idea what, if anything, I'll be doing with these, but it could be interesting. Until next time.